Hi everyone, my name is Anthony Cicchino and I'm here with the Vixen. And we're here to talk about mental health in the LGBTQ plus community today. So happy Pride Month. Do you want to introduce yourself, the Vixen?
Hi, yes. Hi, Anthony. I am the Vixen. I am a drag queen. I am a show producer and creator of Black Girl Magic Drag Show and a musician.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here today. It's awesome to have you.
Thank you.
So I figure we could just start right off by talking about our mental health journey or your mental health journey and your experience with coming out. So maybe how those two relate or just one or the other or together, however you feel comfortable answering that. Your mental health journey and your experience coming out.
Yeah, coming out I was one of those kids that thought that I needed to come out and I really didn't because everyone was already pretty in tune. So for me, it was, of course, a lot of angst and a lot of tension, and then a lot of relief once I realized that my family was waiting to support me, and my friends also were like, duh. And mental health wise, that was a huge relief, and it's so funny, like we talk back then, we were really pushing the it gets better kind of narrative. And now to even think about the tension that I had about coming out, it was like, oh my God, like if I could go back, I'd be like, hurry up and come out. Like everything literally got better afterwards. And I definitely went through a lot of depression and overthinking and stress beforehand, and life just got exponentially better afterwards.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And thank you for sharing that. I can resonate with that too. I came out and everybody was like, yeah, we've known for your whole life. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, thanks. So I think a lot of times, our close group knows even before us sometimes, or even if we don't want to come out or aren't ready, and that's totally fine, to feel comfortable when we do finally come out. But for me too, when I finally came out, my mental health got substantially better. And I felt like I could finally be who I was and who I felt I needed to be.
Yeah, everything. My mom was probably the only person who had any denial about the situation. Yeah. But even in that, after I came out, I was able to be more myself with her. So our relationship got way better because I wasn't hiding anything from her, and she knew me better, and we were able to talk more frankly. So yeah, it was wonderful.
That's great to hear. And same with my mom too. Like she tries to now, learn pronouns and learn things like that and wants to be involved in it all, which is really cool because she didn't know any better beforehand, so that's good to hear. Kind of on the same note, how do you think people can support or be an ally to the LGBTQ plus community?
I think I've been saying this everywhere I possibly can. I think the first step to being an ally is being willing to be wrong. Because I think a lot of times everyone's so afraid of being wrong because they don't want to upset anyone or say anything wrong. And I think we have to allow ourselves to be wrong so that we can learn from our mistakes. Because if you're in denial and you're like, no, I didn't mean it that way and I didn't say it, then now we're never getting to the right part. And that's what's important. So I always encourage everyone to go into conversations knowing that you may get some things wrong and that's okay because you're having the conversation to correct yourself.
Yeah, that is such great advice. I've never really thought about that before, but that's true because coming into a conversation with a member of our community with a growth mindset is so important, and thinking, okay, I'm going to come in to learn more rather than be afraid to make this mistake and not even engage with them.
Right. And I think we, as members of the LGBT community, we have to allow people to be wrong so that we can correct them.
Absolutely.
And we have to, if you're in it, teaching is work. And if you're going into it with the intention to have teachable moments, then you have to allow people to mess up, and you can't react to that in ways that are going to be discouraging. Yeah. But if you're not in a teaching mood, then don't engage because it won't be productive for anyone.
Absolutely. And that's important to notice too. Some people just are not there to learn and not there to, understand. And for our own mental health, or for my own mental health, at least, I need to recognize that and say, this isn't the conversation for me.
Yeah, I have to acknowledge the days that I am not in the mood to teach because it won't be productive for anyone. And, you know, some days I am on it and I am in my philosopher bag and I'm ready to give as much. And then some days I need to disengage, and it's important to know when.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think knowing when really helps me personally with my own mental health and, you know, keeping true to myself and what I stand for as well.
Yeah.
So speak about a little bit about the intersection of your identity and mental health. Where do you think mental health and identity relate?
Oh, in so many places. I mean, well, for one, I'm a drag queen, so identity really plays a lot in my day-to-day. It's funny, nowadays, everyone really struggles with knowing when to call me Vixen. So my real name is also Anthony, which is
nice.
cool. And then most of my friends still call me Vixen. Most of my friends in my current life. If I grew up with you or you're a member of my family, you may call me Anthony. And if I knew you in like middle school to high school or in college, you might know me as Tony. But just because I am so widely known as Vixen now, I kind of prefer for everyone to call me Vixen. And it really throws people that meet me in person for the first time. They're like, oh, but like, what's your name? And I'm like, it's because if I tell you Tony, 5 minutes later, someone's going to come up and say, hey, Vixen. And then we have to have a whole other conversation. It's like, let's just blanket statement. And I think a lot of people feel like that's me putting up a wall and not letting them get to know me. But it's like, what's in a name, right? You know, but when it comes to being a Black man in America, and then being gay in America, and then being a Black gay drag queen in America, identity has, you know, always weighed really heavy on my mental health. And it's funny, when I was younger, I used to feel like dressing up or dressing feminine was first I was afraid to, and then it was empowering and a sense of expression. And now that I've like done it on a world stage with 3 million viewers, it's a job. So now I really take pride and pleasure in the times that I can dress down. But there's such a double-edged sword with that, because, you know, going out into the world as a Black man in plain clothes, I sometimes feel like a target. So I've fallen into a balance of being a very fancy dressed Black man. And the kind of the thought behind that, and even when I was younger, they came to a point where I just didn't own any white t-shirts, and I still don't. And that's because where I'm from, south side of Chicago, Black boys in white t-shirts ended up on the news. And growing into my adulthood, it took a while to kind of articulate the reason why I was always overdressed. And it was because I knew that if the police saw me in nice clothes or feminine clothes, then they would think twice about the stereotypes that they were placing on me. And that kind of became a suit of armor. I still don't own a pair of gym shoes. I have more loafers than sneakers. And those kind of things are the armor that you go out into the world with. And for me, that was a sense of safety for a long time. And now, especially with the world reopening, I have fallen into this trap where a lot of times I just don't want to be noticed, but all my clothes are conversation pieces. And so even if someone doesn't recognize my face, I usually get a lot of attention just for what I'm wearing. And I'm like, I just want to go to the grocery store, but I don't have sweatpants.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing those difficult, you know, that difficult journey that you went on. And I really like that concept of pseudo armor and how that pseudo armor can, you know, help us in our mental health, because I have my own forms of pseudo armor as well, you know, and I think that helps, you know, my mental health journey and helps me feel safe in my community or in communities of strangers. What other forms of like pseudo armor do you think you use?
Definitely. I mean, just a smile, honestly. I feel like so many times it's very hard nowadays with face masks, but I know that so often if I ever lock eyes with a stranger, I have a reflex of smiling because I want to disarm them. And I don't want them to be intimidated by me or like afraid or like, you know, I'm always afraid of like resting bitch face, we call it. And so it's like, So those kinds of things. And I find myself sometimes smiling at people that I don't like because it's a reflex. And so I see someone and my mind recognizes them and it doesn't have time to process that you actually don't want to engage with this person, which can be quite a trap. But I think a lot of times things like that are, one, especially because on my season of RuPaul's Drag Race, I was, very villainized. So I find myself doing a lot of work to correct that. I was out on a date once and I had started talking to a guy. He had seen me interact and meet people a few times, and he kind of likened me to a politician. Mm-hmm. And I was like, "What do you mean?" He was like, "You really have an elevator pitch for people who have never met you before." And and what it is that so many people have a preconceived notion of me. Yeah. And so when they meet me for the first time, I've got 30 seconds to challenge that or change their idea. And so a lot of times, I'm very on and very charismatic, right out the gate, because I know that I have to make a new impression.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. That's a form of pseudo armor in itself, I think, too, that, many in this community have this elevator pitch of who we actually are, which is unfortunate that we have to do that, but also a positive thing because we can then show people, who we really are.
Yeah. If you can be aware of it and self-actualize it, it can be a powerful tool. But it is unfortunate that we are in that kind of world where you can be branded as one thing and then you spend your whole life trying to correct it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that is unfortunate. Kind of going back to a previous topic we were talking about, why do the correct pronouns matter? Why do using the correct pronouns matter? Maybe to somebody who has never thought about using pronouns.
Yes, I think pronouns matter because there are so many people who don't feel seen in their identity and feel very invalidated in their identity. And pronouns are a very easy and costless way to validate someone and create a more loving environment for everyone in the room. I personally, just because I have lived in such a gender non-conforming lifestyle, pronouns are not a big deal to me, but I work with trans people and gender non-conforming people of all types. And so I have seen how crushed someone can easily be by being misgendered and how that can turn a whole conversation or a whole environment into a toxic space. A lot of times without everyone knowing what the dynamic is. And it's because not everyone in the room is feeling seen or feeling validated, and that is toxic for everyone, honestly.
Yeah, for sure. I think you touched upon that greatly. They're not feeling validated. using someone's correct pronouns makes that person feel welcome, validated, and they matter. And that's really all we want as humans,
Yeah.
I know when I was a high school teacher, just asking students on a little anonymous survey, to me, no other students involved, what is your preferred name, your nickname, your pronouns, made a world of difference because, they would tell me this is the only time someone's ever asked me this, including my family, because they're still, coming into themselves as freshmen in high school and things like that. So I was happy that I had the ability to influence that change in the schools where I worked, to have other teachers do that as well, and kind of do some trainings with teachers on why that matters, because there's some teachers or, people out there who just don't even think it matters. But thank you for touching upon that, because you're right. It validates people and it makes them feel like they matter. And that's the crux of it.
Yeah, even in my doctor's office, they refer to me as Tony, and on the form they ask if you have a nickname. And after a while, I realized I was like, wow, because being in the doctor's office is already tense. Yeah. And then, but having that familiarity and being referred to by my nickname instead of my common name or birth name, takes a bit of the tension down. And because if anybody calls me Anthony, I'm it's either my mom, a bill collector, or an Uber driver. So there's and so being called Tony in the doctor's office gives me a little bit of ease, and it makes a huge difference. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. And I think you kind of said about your elevator pitch, having that helps make a huge difference in our potential relationships as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does.
Yeah. So let's move into feeling unaccepted. I know feeling unaccepted is something I struggled with in this community, not really knowing myself. How do you think feeling unaccepted can affect your mental health?
Oh, greatly, because, and as a reality star villain, quote unquote, I know much about this, but I really do believe that when people feel unaccepted, then they start to lash out.
Yeah.
I believe that the first way to create a villain is to treat anyone like a villain. So I think if people feel like they are being mistreated and unrepresented and invalidated, then eventually they start to lash out, and the resentment that builds from that creates villains in the sense. Yeah. And it's just very important to make sure that, we're allowing space for everyone in the room. I'm a big talker. I love to hold court, and I have learned to, make sure that I'm giving everyone airtime, as we say. And even that on the show was a thing, because there were so many big charismatic people in the room. And so anyone who felt like they weren't getting a chance to get a word in would lash out. And yeah, it's very important to make space for other people.
For sure, yeah. And I think that's a really great analogy that you drew of creating that villain, because that is really, what it is, feeling unaccepted. I just saw Cruella, and that kind of is the same villain story of how she becomes a villain. That's a great point that you made.
One of my favorite Disney villain stories is Scar from The Lion King. In the sequel, I guess, it's revealed that his real name was Taka, which is I can't remember the language, but it basically means trash. Okay. And that's because they had Mufasa, who was going to be the king when they were younger. Yeah. And then they had this other boy that they didn't need, so he was trash. So if you're raised your whole life being called trash, you're probably going to become a villain. Absolutely.
Yeah, I didn't know that. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, it speaks to the truth of what you just said. Feeling accepted makes us want to do better for ourselves in our world and not lash out. Whereas feeling like an outcast or like trash makes us want to lash out and become that villain. And I think unfortunately, some people, embrace that villainous character, and that's their pseudo armor a lot of the time.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you feel unrepresented and you feel uncared for, and you feel like you've been villainized, sometimes putting on that armor is the only way for you to feel strong.
For sure. Yeah. So what were some of the things that you did, if you don't mind me asking, to help you, with your mental health while being villainized?
Woo! I think the biggest redeeming quality, or the thing that has helped me survive so many situations, is just good old stubbornness. And the ability to just tell myself that I'm right when 100 people are telling me I'm wrong. And that's a dangerous thing, because after a while, and I think we see this in stars like Kanye West or Azalea Banks, we see this trend where there are times when you're 100% right and people are still telling you you're wrong, and you get used to that. And so then when you are wrong, you don't believe anyone that's telling you you're right, because people have always been telling you you're wrong. So why should I believe you today when you weren't right yesterday? So for me, it's a checks and balances system of always sticking to my guns and having a sliver of doubt, just holding on to the imposter syndrome just a little bit. And like I said before with allies, having a willingness to be wrong. So what I say to my friends or people around me is, I am willing to be wrong, but you have to convince me. And if I am wrong, it shouldn't be so hard to convince me either.
That's great. Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, because I do have a track record of being right, and that's because I'm terrified of being wrong. So honestly, most times if I have a doubt about something, I won't engage in the conflict. But if I have thought it through and I'm passionate about my position in it, that's when I engage. And my mom always says that if I'm willing to fight with you, I've already won.
Nice. Yeah. That's awesome. I can resonate with that too. And I think sometimes, talking to people who might be external to this community, kind of going back to, that elevator pitch that we sometimes need, that can either be detrimental to our mental health engaging with that person, or it can really help our mental health, because we know who we are and we know, what's right in our community, or what's right for us at least.
Yes.
And so engaging with someone who doesn't really know and is saying, they know us better than we know ourselves is really hurtful and damaging, really.
Yeah. And it takes, and when it comes at you in like a high volume, like it did for me after Drag Race, I didn't even realize how much of it I had internalized. And because the narrative was being fed to me every day. And it's like people who watch Fox News over and over, and they just start to accept things. And I was, finally like done with the show and done with touring and out in the world and like making new friends. And I remember a new friend told me that they loved me for the first time, and I was flabbergasted. I was like, and then I was like, why is it so shocking to me that somebody loves me? And it was because I had been telling myself secretly that you're bad, you're bad, you're bad. And then someone saw me for who I was and appreciated me, and I disagreed. I was like, no, you should think twice about that. And this, especially over quarantine and, like having a bubble and a pod and a group chat of friends to lean on has been really good for my mental health, because I was able to see myself through other people's eyes that appreciated me and kind of like learn what I gave to the room that other people like. And so I learned to reappreciate myself because of the things that I contributed, and I learned what it is about me that people like.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think sometimes we have to remind ourselves to do that, to ask our friends and loved ones, like, what is it you love about me? Because we are sometimes, me personally, get really down on myself and don't see the best in me and start to double think things. And, from your experience too, it sounds like you can resonate maybe with, believing, like you said, those things that other people are saying, or that you internalize them. And so when someone shows you that you're great, you don't even believe it anymore. And that's why it's great that you touch upon, how important it is to believe in yourself and to believe what you have to say. Yeah.
My grandmother, when I was really young, my grandmother was a church secretary, and I was always in the church. And there was a song was sang in the church that alluded to, like, if I help someone, then my living will not be in vain. And I remember her stopping me, and I was like maybe 10, honestly, and stopping me and saying, like, if I ever die, I want that on my tombstone. And she died when I was 14, and I was like, I have one job, and it was to get that on her tombstone, and I did. Nice. And I've kind of carried that with me throughout my life, and it really is. It's the idea that, like, none of us know why we are here on this planet. None of us know the right way to do anything, but the least we can do is help each other get through it. And I think I've heard a lot that people don't always remember what you said, but they do remember how you made them feel. And so I think if you in your life can make other people feel supported, then you'll have a great legacy to leave behind.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for all of that and sharing that story about your grandmother. That's great. And I love that quote. People don't remember how you what you said to them, but they remember how they made you feel. That is so impactful. Even just for me, talking to any stranger, I always try to meet people with kindness, even at like the DMV or, somewhere where I'm not necessarily happy to be, just because, that person's going to remember how you made them feel. And it's a power, I think, like a positive power that we all have to be able to inspire the best in others or create villains in them, right?
Yeah, exactly. I used to be a cashier at Meijer grocery store, and I could tell, like, if someone would come to the register with like a negative energy, it would impact our interactions. Someone would come up with a positive energy, it would impact their interaction. And I am a crafty queen, and so I go to Michael's a lot, and Michael's always has coupons at the register, but the cashiers tend to pick and choose who they give the coupon to. So when I get in line, I start turning on the charm, and I'm like, let me come into this, and I'm like trying to get that coupon, really, and it works. It really, if you come to someone with joy, they tend to reciprocate.
Absolutely, and I think realizing that you're, grasping a whole new power that you have in your life to influence these situations, like getting coupons on Michael's, because it is true.
Yeah.
Let's end on this one question, and then I have one more thing afterwards. But what do you wish people understood about your mental health condition?
Well, especially because I on Drag Race and on Twitter and in the world, I allow myself to react. I think a lot of times people think that I am off the handle in some way, and for me, reacting is kind of a self-care, because I think the norm that we've kind of fallen into of holding our cards close to the chest and being very calculated in the way, I think that that's damaging to the soul to never allow yourself to feel what you're feeling in the moment.
Yeah.
And so for me, I allow myself to do that, not irresponsibly, but because I love myself. And if I am feeling this type of way, I am going to allow myself to speak up for myself in the moment.
Absolutely.
And I know my own heart and my own intentions, and I know that I don't mean any ill will to anyone in the world. So I can allow myself to speak freely, because even if I misstep, I know it wasn't my intention and that I can clean it up, because genuinely I never meant anyone any harm. I think especially on reality shows, a lot of times you see people who are very reserved and they're holding back. And once they finally let it out, you realize, oh, you're a bitch. That's why you were holding it back.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm a sensitive soul, but I'm not actually a bitch. And I don't really want to hurt anyone's feelings.
Yeah.
So that's why even on Drag Race, I was not afraid to allow myself to speak freely. And I wish people understood that, wearing your heart on your sleeve is not a weakness.
Yeah, absolutely. And to kind of piggyback off that, kindness, being kind, bringing that positive energy is not a weakness either. And it's not necessarily easy to walk into Michael's and bring that charisma every time you go in, or to just use that example again. Because people always tell me, like, oh, you do this, you have so much energy, you're so energetic, you have all this going for you, like your depression can't be, real. And how invalidating that is, to feel when all the dark things you've struggled with and all of the feelings you felt and still struggle with.
It's like a battery pack, you go out into the world with a pocket full of joy, and then you come home with what's left.
It's so true. And you come home and it's dark and quiet and you're like, okay, what am I going to do now?
Yeah, I can have the best weekend where I see all of my friends and, a whole day at the beach or whatever. And then even just the stark contrast of like being out with a ton of people and then suddenly being alone, and your mind is like, I'm alone. Yeah. I'm alone.
Yeah, for sure. It makes me think of the part in Lady Gaga's documentary where she says, I go from people screaming at me all day and touching me all day to total silence.
Yeah.
And that was just so impactful for me to hear, because it does feel that way, like you said, after a day at the beach or a full weekend. And we may be charismatic and out there having fun, but that doesn't mean that we can't feel the way our mental health makes us feel.
Yeah, it's almost like the toys in Toy Story, but in reverse. It's like when the kid's there, I get to, be animated and play and come to life. And once he's gone, I'm like...
Another great analogy. That's really good. That's a good picture to paint. I lied because I want to ask one more question.
Okay, I'm having a good time. Let's do it.
Me too. This is great. So what is advice you would give your teenage self?
Okay. My teenage self especially was so consumed with the path that I wanted to be on. You know what I mean? Like I was a kid, luckily I was a kid who always knew that I wanted to be in entertainment, that I wanted to be a star of some sort. And that was like, just tension, because I was like, I gotta be on this path. And honestly, even with Drag Race, the closer I got to achieving the goal, the more crazy I became, and like the more angsty I became, because I was so worried about getting across the finish line. And I think if I could tell myself anything, it would just be the validation of like you are right, you are on the right path, you're doing the work, and that's what's going to get you there, and just keep doing the work. for me, it was like, I knew that I wanted to sing. I knew I wanted to dance. I knew I wanted to do like hair and makeup and all of these things. I resisted drag for so long because it was only like Drag Race was new and it was only becoming like a pathway of success. And, but if you know that you love doing something, you should just go for it. And I would tell myself, because I studied the wrong things for a while because I, thought that this would be more successful. And I would, just place all your chips, like bet on yourself, really. And because that's what paid off for me in the end. When I quit my job at Olive Garden and, like I said, I've got 10 gigs this month, that'll pay the bills. And then next month I'll worry about it. And hopefully that's when I gained the momentum to stardom. And so I would tell myself at any age to, believe in myself and to bet on myself and not waste my time going in any direction I don't want to go in.
Yeah, I love that. That's so important. Bet on yourself. And that is such great advice. I was going to say something similar. I would tell my teenage self, all these unique things that make you you, that you're being bullied for, or that you feel down on yourself about, embrace them, exemplify them, make them a higher magnitude to inspire others, but also so that you can go home with yourself every night, again, like Lady Gaga says, and sleep, peacefully with yourself because you did the right thing, like you were saying. Yeah,
exactly. My kind of a pop star guru is Jay-Z. He's also a Sagittarius like me. And I heard him say once, like, you can be a star out in the world and people can love you for this thing, but if it's a facade, at the end of the day, you have to go home with you and you have to face you. So be yourself and allow people to love you, because people, no matter who you are, people are going to love and hate you. So allow the people who love you to love the real you so that when you go home, you can love that person too.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great advice. I want to end on a moment of gratitude, a moment of happiness. Things are very hard right now, and that's totally fine. To feel not okay, it is okay to not be okay, and that's fine and validating. And I want to just ask you, what's something you're grateful for, either this month or just today? What's something you find gratitude in?
I find gratitude in, honestly, close friends, because there's only so many people in your life who are going to see what you really go through and like see your struggle. So I guess what I'm really my gratitude is really for group chats. Because especially during the pandemic when we couldn't see each other all the time, just being able to check in with friends and say like, this is how I feel today. This is what I'm thinking. And, just having a sounding board for my emotions and, we all do it. It's like, I'm really tired. I'm tired of being in the house But then so now I have this group of people who saw my journey throughout the pandemic, who knew how hard I was working. And I have a lot of friends who are in the medical field too. So I got to, talk to them through their experiences. And my mom is also a respiratory therapist. And so being able to talk to people and kind of like have witnesses to my experience, that really, I think that's what friendships and relationships are most valuable for, is someone who witnesses your journey. And because there will always be people in the world who don't understand you, but the people who do and have the full story are really great.
For sure. Yeah, I agree with that. People who witnesses to your journey. I love that. That is such a great way to think of your friends and your family. And for me, it's very similar, but instead of, a friend group, I think I'm grateful for my journal, where I can just spill everything out and put whatever I want without being judged or any fear of judgment. And, really be myself in that journal and then get all that out and walk away and be, who I need to be for that day.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time today. This was really awesome. Thank you for your vulnerable conversations, your, reliving difficult moments in your past. We really appreciate that. Thank you for being here, for being you, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you so much. This was so awesome. I'm very happy with everything we said. I think it's very useful for a lot of people, and I hope it helps anyone in any way it can. Thank you.
Me too. Yeah, thank you.